Hello and welcome to this ICAEW webinar, How You Can Prepare for Self-Assessment and MTD Ahead of Time in association with BTCSoftware. My name is Rose Harrington and I'm the Practice Manager here at ICAEW. I'll be your facilitator for today's session. We very much encourage you to get involved with today's webinar. You can submit your questions to us at any time by typing a question into the question box and pressing send. The questions will come straight to us without being sent to the rest of the audience. We've allowed time at the end for Q&A, so please do keep them coming in. You can also use the question box to let us know if you're having any difficulties with the technology, and we'll do our best to help with these. Please also take note that the resources widget on the right-hand side of your screen is where you can download a copy of the slides from here and other useful links and downloads. Our speakers today are Tim Pearce and Dan Keane, both from BTCSoftware. Tim Pearce is Head of Sales Management in the sales team at BTCSoftware UK and is focused on helping getting new customers achieve a memorable ROI for their tax deployments. This means advising on tax software that will suit an accountant's needs and or a business user to ensure that they have more time to focus on strategy and business demands. Tim has over 18 years of sales experience within the tax software industry. Tim's mainly responsible for sales of new business and drives BTCSoftware. Daniel Keane is a technical sales manager and has been with BTCSoftware since 2016, performing a number of key roles, including establishing BTCSoftware's Making Tax Digital offering for accountants and businesses. Daniel has a strong knowledge base of software solutions and regularly reviews MTD updates. Making Tax Digital is one of his key focuses as part of the sales team. I'll now hand over to Tim and Dan.
Thank you very much, Ros, and also Randall behind the scenes for your input and help. Appreciate the introduction. I'm sure Dan and I will do our best to live up to the billing if that's possible. Thank you primarily also to those of you in attendance today. It's very much appreciated. Hopefully the session will be of benefit. We will run through an agenda very shortly so you have an idea of what will be covered outside of the topic and the title that you've already received for today's session. Okay, so it might be amiss if we weren't to introduce ourselves. So you've heard our kind of official titles, but potentially to give you a bit of an insight into who we are. I'm fairly certain that's correct for you as well, Dan. Kind of an understanding of who we are. So you can see there that, in fact, I'll introduce Dan at this point before I waffle on about me. Dan, I've noticed that you've got 1980s sitcoms as your kind of guilty pleasure. Is that the case? I'm fairly certain you were born in the 90s.
Yeah, I was certainly born in the 90s, but I do have a bit of a guilty pleasure for 80s sitcoms, especially Only Fools and Horses. So Christmas comes around very soon, so I'll be spending all of that watching all of those back to back, I think.
Perfect. I'm sure that's many people's guilty pleasure, Only Fools and Horses, and an electronic guitar that I've not had the pleasure of hearing. This is maybe one of the benefits for working remotely, away from the office.
Yeah, exactly that, and I don't think you'll ever hear it, to be honest. It probably sounds like a cat being strangled, but I do try.
Okay, and my guilty pleasures, it actually says Swiss chocolate. Really, that should be any chocolate that's going. So with Christmas coming around the corner, I'm sure that will play a major factor in my life. And my hidden talent, I've got aging midfield general. That's been kindly provided by our marketing department, who we played football with recently. So the kind of the Swiss chocolate is almost certainly reducing my midfield generalship. I can certainly say that. Okay, so that's an understanding of who we are in a kind of a light-hearted way. In terms of the agenda for today, obviously the welcome has come and gone. It'd probably be amiss if you weren't to explain who BTCSoftware are. Some of you hopefully may well be aware of us, some of the members. Then we're going to look at January. So I think it's fair to say it's likely to be a January like no other. So we're going to focus on some of the kind of the obvious challenges associated with January. A lot of the information, just let you know, a lot of the information that we've consolidated and I'm hoping to relay has come from our client base. So we're happy to hear it hasn't come from a couple of sales guys that haven't actually lived through January. So hopefully that will have more pertinence to it. In addition to that, we're going to look at some of the three key factors, so three key focus areas in terms of making January successful in light of some of the potential changes that lie ahead. We're then going to look at some of the key changes, And then we're going to switch focus from January and have a kind of a look at MTD from the current scenario, and then in terms of how we feel MTD will move forward. And then at the very end, we'll have a Q&A, and all of you are very much welcome to ask any questions that you may have. Okay, so very kind of high-level introduction to BT Software, for those who don't know. We've been in existence for just over 20 years, I think. In fact, the back end of February was our 21st birthday. We have in the region of 2,500 practices that use our software, many on a day-to-day basis, and over 1,000 businesses in addition to practices. We have in the region of 15,000 users. Obviously, that's very much kind of a fluid number. And in addition to offering, and again, it probably would be amiss if we weren't to mention that we have won various awards over the last couple of years for our software. Okay, in terms of our offering, our solution, we offer essentially an integrated database that includes self-assessment, corporation tax, accounts production, wrapped around with practice management. We have a hosted variant of our software available at the moment, which is termed Solution Cloud, so the benefits of the cloud solution within that hosted environment. We are in the process of introducing a fully web browser-based solution. So at some point next year, we'll have a full web browser-based product. At the moment, and this is relevant to the MTD conversation, we have practice management and MTD, the VAT, contained within that premise. And we also, in addition to the kind of the core offering, have a company secretarial module which sits alongside the other modules. In terms of who we work with, you can see there that we work with some of the major bookkeeping players in the market and a couple of document management providers in addition to bookkeeping providers. I'll read through this very quickly. Our mission statement, but it does give you an idea of kind of who we are and what we're looking to achieve for our products and our company as a whole. You can see there our mission statement to provide feature-rich, affordable accounting and tax software to simplify the lives of accountants, businesses, and individuals. Okay, so the next slide really is a nod to the what we all know is the really kind of big elephant in the room. So there's no real kind of prizes for guessing what that elephant might be this year. We've alluded to it in the title on the agenda, which is a January like no other. Before we discuss the dreaded C word in terms of COVID as we move forward and how that might affect January and how we plan for that, a couple of more light-hearted facts on what I found about elephants. In fact, Dan found it, so I can't really take credit for this. Dan prompted me and said, okay, well, it's going to be quite relatively heavy at this end in terms of talking about COVID, and January is a stressful time, so let's just lighten up maybe with 3 facts that you may know, but you may not know. I suspect you may not if you're in my category here. So the first fact is elephants are continuously eating. So much like myself throughout lockdown, elephants live to eat, literally live to eat, are always eating, I think for 18 hours a day, in fact. They're some of the thickest skinned mammals available, so they have thick skins, much like I'm sure you'd agree many accountants need to have. And in addition to that, elephants are famous for being able to yawn from a very young age. So hopefully there's no elephants on the webinar this afternoon. Okay, so what does 2020 look like to you in pictures? So here we have the 2 kind of prominent products that I never thought leading into 2020 I'd ever need to purchase in my life. One is the ubiquitous face mask followed by hand sanitizer. Who would have thought that these 2 items would be so relevant and prominent a couple of years ago, or even a year ago, throughout the whole of this year. So as we know it, and you know as well as I do, life's changed, so we're not going to sort of dwell on that fact, but just to kind of summarize what 2020 looks like to us in terms of a couple of pictures. Okay, so with that in mind, I would like to propose a question by way of a poll, if that's possible. So I would like to ask the members on the call. Do you feel January will be more challenging due to the pandemic? So if you wouldn't mind answering that question for me, and then we can look at the information, and then we'll cross-reference it with some of our client base that have answered the same question. Okay, so all being well, we now have kind of an understanding. Okay, so that's interesting. So 63% feel that January will potentially prove more challenging, whilst 36%, that's fantastic, that's a really good split in terms of the information that we had sent back to us, feel that it may not be the case. So that's positive. I guess from our perspective, it's how we can help with the 63% that feel it may be more challenging, and how we can shore up or help to shore up through potential advice, the 36 that it may not be. Okay, so we conducted a very similar survey where we found out that around about 20%, 18% to be exact, we're expecting kind of business as usual. So there wasn't kind of added emphasis on this January in light of the scenario in which we will find ourselves worldwide. But a much greater majority, or a majority, as you can see from there, 82%, were of the mindset that there might be additional challenges involved with this January. So we took that kind of poll as we posed it to you guys. Thank you for that. And then we asked questions around why that might be the case in terms of why January may be like no other this year or early next year. And these are some of the responses that we received. So amplified stress, obviously the stress levels are higher than they would be across the board in any walk of life. The client contact element, obviously face-to-face contact is very likely to be a no-go in the run-up to the self-assessment sequence. Staff furlough, both the agents and teams and also the clients. We have made aware that many clients with whom we deal with have gone through the furlough process. Home working, so this is a big one for BTCSoftware. We're no longer based in northeast Surrey. We're now scattered throughout the particular areas of the southeast in most cases. So we've not gone too far, I would have thought, but most of us all of us are actually working from home. Some of us use the office on a kind of an infrequent basis. So that has its challenges. Additional COVID-related advice. There's now an onus to impart advice in relation to COVID. And general connectivity. Hopefully that won't be an issue on this particular presentation, but it has been on various company calls, and I'm sure we can all testify that can be quite challenging and equally frustrating. So the big reason as to why is really the kind of unknown factor. It's unprecedented. There is no benchmark for it. So kind of moving away from kind of the view of how January will be, what areas do we believe should be focused on in light of the fact that there will be challenges ahead? Some of those challenges will be, as you've already seen in the poll, will be catered for and will be planned for. But how can we break down those kind of three key focus areas? So we've done it accordingly. So we've listed digitalisation, clients, and staff. So we've moved it into three different departments. So if we start with digitalisation, these are kind of points really that we've been working with. So it's not necessarily always going to be specific to an agent, a practice, that challenges across the board, but some of them will be, as you can see from a couple of points, will be relevant only to agents. Okay, so find the right cloud application to communicate, like Zoom, Teams, or Skype. So when we first decamped from the offices, we knew that we had different teams, or we have different teams that were using different applications in which to communicate. So we've tried to, over the course of time, centralize that. So we have, I think we have 2 different platforms in which we use. So we use Zoom for external meetings. We use Teams for internal meetings in order to communicate. Communication is obviously very key in terms of where we find ourselves. So we've tried to streamline it so that we have two applications that work really well for us and have proven to work really well for us over the last kind of 6 months. But when we first decamped, we had probably up to 8 or 9 different applications in play. So we worked out what's the best application for the best type of communication. Use a GDPR compliant client portal that works for you and your clients. Fully appreciate that the majority of you will have in place a GDPR compliant tool for communicating with your clients. So many of you would have already undertaken that process. One of the difficulties in changing a GDPR compliant portal is that it doesn't just affect you as kind of the owner of the portal, but also the clients with whom you communicate. So we understand it's kind of a big undertaking to change, but now could be and would be, I would suggest, a good opportunity to explore options to perform due diligence as to if your client portal is as it needs to be and if any improvements could be seen through adopting another model, if that's the case. Introduce workflow and automation for tasks and processes. So I think the key to this really is, if it can be automated, then why not try it through automation? It's not always going to be a case of everything can be automated. We all know that. Certain things will need manual governance. But if it can be automated, try to automate it in the first place. It might require fine-tuning, but if tasks and processes can be automated, systemization, then really that would be a good starting point to sort of explore as to whether that's the case. Determine your staff and client IT competencies. So we, surprisingly, although we're an IT company, and I sit very kind of low on this particular scale, Dan's at the other end of the scale, my IT competency is lower than it should be. I know that. So I've undertaken a couple of self-improvement courses. But we did sort of address the issue prior to leaving the offices, because I don't always have the IT team on hand to say, excuse me, Josh, but how do I do this? So it's very worthwhile to undertake and view, to undertake a kind of some research as to the competency of your staff, but also obviously your clients. So one of the big factors in terms of why people may not look to push clients in certain areas is due to their IT competencies. So we understand that there are challenges to that. So it's worthwhile sort of determining what those challenges are and if they can be bridged. The second point to kind of the actual HMRC submissions is what you can receive from HMRC. So we, like many others, employ a pre-pop tool that brings in the P60 information relevant to the digital tax return. So it's very much worthwhile employing that if you're not already. So HMRC offer two-way integration through many software vendors. Okay, how can you communicate with your clients is the kind of the header here. So continuously is the answer to that. Continuous communication is imperative. We're going to talk about method of communication later on in one of Dan's slides, but it's important to reference that without sort of kind of banging the drum too hard, communication throughout these times is absolutely imperative. This is one that I'm sure you've already accounted for, but ensuring that your clients are signed up for self-assessment. It might be worthwhile filtering your clients who've signed up for COVID assistance. Again, Dan will shed further light on as to why that might be later on in the presentation, but it might be worthwhile at this point sort of tracking those who've requested COVID assistance and those for whom you've advised accordingly. Categorizing your clients in terms of input required. So we can all do that in terms of we can determine who requires additional effort, so which of your clients require that additional effort, particularly when you're maybe not meeting or won't be meeting with your clients on a face-to-face basis. It's very much worthwhile, if you can, ranking them in a semblance of order. And the final one, I'm sure you'll be aware of, is to invoice your clients promptly. And then finally, just to sort of look at staffing within the practice, within the agency. So we, as a team, in terms of BTC Software, we will meet daily as a department. So the sales team will meet daily. We try to keep the communication short, sharp, and punchy because it is on a daily basis. So it's restricted to 15 minutes in terms of length. And we also, as a business, as a kind of a company-wide agenda, will meet every Friday afternoon, which is kind of a quieter time for us. So we choose to meet, in most cases, between 4:30 and 5:30 as a company to relay relevant information outside of the departmental updates, which occur daily. Work-life balance. I mean, that can be as much as taking time to step away from the office or the house, as it might be now, or the office within the house, and just re-energizing. Retain the fun element. So we found that when we were talking individually, we very much found that we were talking purely about business, and the fun element, the reasons outside of kind of offering a great working environment and the interest in work was missing as to why people enjoy working. So retain the fun element. So we've employed a number of, mainly within actually the weekly company meetings, we've employed a number of kind of tactics to make working fun. And then define responsibility. So really define responsibility, and that will lead to accountability. So ahead of time, define who's responsible for what. And then, as I say, that should grow accountability. And then finally, we ask at the beginning of every month a question which really works well. We found it's been kind of worthwhile in terms of generating dialogue. So at the start of every month, we'll ask a question as a team, and everybody will answer the question, all 30 employees. And that question would be, how full is your tank at the start of the month? So how are you feeling? How energized are you? And then alongside that, we actually asked for a couple of achievements throughout the previous month, both work-related and outside of work. But we find that really encourages dialogue amongst the team. So how full is your tank? You provide a score out of 10, and then from there, often it kind of leads into dialogue as to how can you re-energize? What can we do to help? And it really does sort of enable people to discuss issues, and in many cases it kind of a problem. I have to get this right. A problem shared is a problem half, I believe. So we kind of look at it from that perspective, and it's worked really well. It's a great way of kind of continuing dialogue throughout the course of the month. Okay, on that note, I'm now going to hand over to our resident musician. So Dan, if I can hand over to you.
Thank you. So for the next couple of slides, we really wanted to focus on BTC Software's working from home experience. So how us as the company has worked from home since, I think we moved out of the office from March, and how we've been coping, and some methods that we've used, and some things that are definitely worth taking note. So I know for the first one that I've got is a lack of natural interaction, and I've kind of put in brackets there the water cooler moment. So recently Fulham got promoted to the Premier League. We're not doing too well at the moment, but that's something that I'll be chewing everyone's ear off about in the office during a morning coffee, including Josh and the support team, who's actually a Brentford fan. But obviously I'm actually unable to do that at the moment. So there is kind of that lack of natural moving away from your desk and having a quick chat with someone within the office. So it's important to have those kind of short meetings. If you can have a small coffee morning, It's something that we schedule in the diary. We have a sort of a 10-15 coffee morning, which is an open Zoom call in which team members can jump on, make a cup of tea, make a coffee, and have a little chat, which is something that you may have missed when working in the office, is that communication. The second point that I've got is lost in translation. So I'm sure we all know from experience that an email sometimes doesn't always carry the same emotional weight as a face-to-face conversation. And sometimes when you're sending an email or you're sending internet communication, you can run the risk of appearing quite short and maybe aloof. So that's definitely something to bear in mind when you're having these email conversations or these conversations through chats, whether it's Teams, which Tim's mentioned already, or something like Slack, one of those online communication tools. The third point I've got is a different type of organized. So working from home is all about being self-motivated. It includes incorporating your own challenges. And sometimes you may need to find out that you want to block some time out in your day to spend on a specific task or a specific goal. And you really want to make a goal of what you want to achieve within that allotted time. So make sure to communicate this well with your team so that they understand that you won't be able to answer calls or emails. And you may need to organize cover as well if needs be. And then for the bottom one there, I've got new external factors. So I know when I call Tim, frequently we hear Raffles barking in the background. I should actually qualify that Raffles is his dog and not his partner. He does sound like a Rottweiler, but actually he is a sausage dog. And incidentally, I found out that sausage dogs are actually the most aggressive breed of dogs found in the UK. So there we go. But joking aside, you do need to accept that when you're calling someone or you're on a Zoom call, there can be external factors in play. I have actually got some tree surgeons outside my house at the moment, so hopefully they don't start again. And if it's not your dog or if it's not a tree surgeon, then maybe it might be an Amazon delivery, which actually incidentally would start dog off, I guess. It's kind of a vicious circle with that one. So we've got some actual benefits. So we've looked at some of the changes that have come about with remote working, but these are going to be some potential benefits of actually working from home or working remotely. The first one that I've got is potential cost savings. So you won't have to buy lunch each day. You might not buy a coffee in your local Costa. Other coffee shops are available. Or you might want to, you won't buy lunch. So you can prepare something at home. And it also will include transportation fees, stuff like fuel to travel to work. So saving money is obviously a big one. That's the one that I've put at the top there. The second one that we've got is you'll have more time than you'll ever realized. So actually a big surprise is you'll find that how much longer you work and spend more time at your desk versus going into an office every day. So I've certainly found out that I've been more productive and have even more time to invest in maybe building the business by not communicating or wasting time on office politics and gossip. The lack of commute is obviously an important one. So as well as the expense of the lack of commute, which we've mentioned in the first point, the lack of commute actually alleviates panicking about late trains or traffic or struggling to get into work on time because of roadblocks or anything along those lines. And that's really going to put a bad start to the day. So that's completely eliminated when working from home. You can take better care of yourself, so you're actually able to eat and live more healthily by dedicating more time to breakfast. You can make healthy lunch choices since you can prepare it at home versus buying something to go when you're in the office. And you can actually drink more water and can factor in exercise in the morning or your lunch breaks. I know I've been trying to go for runs every now and then, maybe do a bit of circuit training in your back garden, that sort of thing. And then finally, it's easier to find inspiration. So studies actually show that working from home with a kind of an ergonomic setup and a sort of a comfortable living space actually gives you the feeling of having more control over your life. So leading to enjoying work more and setting up your home office the way that you like is going to inspire you to be more creative. So try to go for walks before and during lunch as well, and that will help you sort of clear your head, hopefully relax, and then you can go back to work with a fresh mind. So there's some benefits and some changes that we've seen in terms of working from home. We're now going to move from working from home into looking at January 2021. So I've got quite a impactful, if you can call it that, graphic there. and it is pretty much business as usual. There isn't really an awful lot of changes coming in for January 2020. There's a few changes, including postgraduate loans are now on the SA forms, so they could get paid in parallel with any student loans that your clients might have. There's also some changes for capital gains regarding non-residence disposal of UK properties, which you'll see all appear on your self-assessment forms when doing the self-assessment tax returns. But one thing that you might not see on there, and that is definitely worth looking out for, is July payments on account. So if they have been deferred to January, then you'll need to make sure that your clients either have or have not paid those payments, and then you can deal with those. So don't forget about those. That's something that obviously is coming around in January 2020 that's definitely worth looking at. Now, next up, we've got a couple of quotes from some Americans. Don't worry, it's not Trump or Biden. They are slightly older. But I think these quotes really do resonate with the January tax period. And the first one that we've got there is from Mr. Benjamin Franklin. And this particular quote is, "By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail." And then the next quote I thought I'd put in there, we do realize that, I suppose even for the support team, January is a kind of a bit of a battle. So I thought I'd put this quote in here from Dwight Eisenhower as well. "In preparing for battle, I've always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable." Okay, so I'm going to pass over to back to Tim for this particular slide.
Thanks, Ben. So I'm guessing battle might refer there to the perceived January. Is that correct? Would it work in that capacity?
Indeed, yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay, so we're now going to, having looked at challenges that lie ahead in the short term, we want to spend some time now on kind of the second part of the topic, and that's in relation, as you can see there, for making tax digital. So you'd be happy to know that ahead of time we have prepared something that will provide exact understanding of what will happen at every step of the road in terms of what we'll need to do moving forward as a software company, as an accountant, as a practitioner. It will take account of everything that's needed. It's a very, very useful tool that will also communicate with the revenue to determine what needs to happen and when it needs to happen. And as you can see there, it's my famous crystal ball, which unfortunately we don't have at the moment. So we're very much working with changes. And those changes, as I'm sure you'll know, have already happened in terms of mandating business was obviously the first initial MTD, the business was mandated first, and we actually went to the extent of writing a module, which we still have. So we have a module ready for business. But then we were told by the revenue, actually, no, that's not going to be the case. It will start with VAT, which led lots of people to ask the question, well, will it stop at VAT? To which I heard somebody mention, well, no, the clue's kind of in the title. It's making tax digital, not VAT. So it started with that because obviously that is deemed to be the easier of the transitions, I would have thought. So without sounding too flippant, we don't have all the answers, but we do work very closely with the revenue, especially in terms of the release of products ahead of time. We're on their partner scheme as well. So we've worked very closely, so we have an understanding as best we can as to what the changes will look like. So, moving away from the crystal ball, the question that I'd like to ask now to all attendees is, if you don't mind me asking, have you prepared your clients for MTD in terms of self-assessment? So if I could ask that question, so obviously the options there are a yes, no, or somewhat. Fantastic. Thank you for that. So we can see it's quite highly weighted in terms of no, although that will be obviously not as yet. Some have, some of you have, and some have to an extent. So it's kind of it's kind of fairly standard in terms of the response that we have received from our client base. So that kind of fits the picture really, in terms of the vast majority to date haven't. So we just want to look at, as reference, the experience from our clients' perspective and some of the steps that they've taken thus far. So it's really the experiences that we've learned from some of our clients. So how are they helping to prepare their clients for the changes? The first one is actually one that hadn't come to mind until it's related to me by a client, I think it's the week before last, in terms of he had arranged for a series of webinars to take place to really use them as a way of updating as and when legislation comes to the fore and changes and guidance is shown. And that really could be quite a valuable tool if you wanted to group your clients, if you're happy to do that, if you're happy to group them on a webinar such as this potentially, and to really sort of partake information as you know it and as you receive it. So that could be a useful tool for you, client webinars. I obviously appreciate the kind of email campaigns are more than likely a thing for some of you, for some of those who said, yes, we are already informing our clients as to the changes and what they need to do in order to prepare. So email campaign, I know of a client who will literally forward everything that he receives from the revenue. That might be a bit too broad brush, but it very well could be a case that you sort of define the information that you receive as an agent and then send that on in the format of an email to your client base to whom it's relevant. One-to-one phone calls. There's a lot to be said for verbal communication. One-to-one phone calls. Obviously, the meeting in person at the moment is not a viable option. So potentially a one-to-one phone call can carry great weight. Obviously, it's perfectly interactive as a phone call. And the final point is the workflow process through practice management. So really, what some of our clients are sort of alluding to there is that they set up tasks within their software. So have they received what's needed at a certain point? At what stage of the journey are their clients on currently? So there's workflow that's been set up through practice management. In this case, obviously, it's our practice management, but I'm sure many of you will have practice management functionality that will allow for relevant workflow. Okay, I'm going to pass back to Dan now, and he's going to discuss some timelines.
So we've got a timeline here that starts with MTD for VAT, which was introduced in April 2019, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. If you have online bookkeeping tools that are being able to submit your quarterly or monthly MTD VAT returns, or even if you're using bridging software as well. Now, the question that we get quite often is that will bridging software ever expire? Obviously, the answer to that is no. I suppose the next change that will come in for MTD for VAT is to move all clients onto MTD for VAT. So not just the ones that are over the threshold, but all clients. So it's important that you get prepared for that. Then after that, we have MTD for income tax and self-assessment, which is in 2023, which we're obviously discussing on today's webinar. And then following that, we have the MTD for corporation tax, which is in 2026, which is due to be in 2026. So some common questions that we do get. So one question, the start to the question is, what does or when does the pilot scheme start? So actually you can sign up or enroll onto the pilot scheme now for self-assessment, which I would recommend that you do. It's important that you get up and running, you understand how the process works. And I think signing up to the pilot scheme now is a really, really good way to do that and just get ahead of the curve. Will spreadsheets count as digital build-up of data? Yep, absolutely. So the same with MTD for VAT. Spreadsheets are a digital source in terms of building up records of digital records, digital record keeping, and spreadsheets does count. So you don't necessarily have to move all of your clients onto online bookkeeping. Spreadsheets will suffice as well. When's the official start date? So that will be the 6th of April 2023. And will there be any exemptions for my clients? So there will be exemptions for those under the threshold of £10,000. And similar with MTD for VAT, if there are exemptions in terms of religion, age, remoteness of location, any of those issues, obviously HMRC will deal with those on a case-by-case basis. So some tips to get prepared for making tax digital for income tax and self-assessment. So the first one is really, really important. I would encourage digital record keeping for all of your clients, even if it's spreadsheets. So not just for those clients that fall within the MTD bracket, but actually all of your clients. It will be good practice for all of your clients for obviously eventually when they move into the MTD rules. And it's just good to have that kind of practice across all of your clients, so across your entire client base. Enroll clients onto the pilot scheme. So that is available now, and then 2024, the pilot scheme will open for corporation tax. So it's not due to be live until 2026, but you can actually sign up for the pilot scheme for corporation tax in 2024. I would automate emails to remind clients of quarterly deadlines. You can have Outlook plugins that are able to do that, or you can use sort of practice management tools that will allow you to automate those emails just to remind those clients of those quarterly deadlines rather than having an annual deadline. For the first year, it's obviously going to be really important to remind the clients of the deadlines that they've got coming up. Focus on quarterly submissions and not annual returns. So we have been told, obviously, by HMRC not to say quarterly returns. It is a quarterly submission, but it is obviously now not an annual return. And then the last one is be prepared to sign clients up to MTD individually. The same way that we saw with MTD for VAT, there may not be a bulk sign up of all of your clients within the agent services account. So make sure that you are prepared to sign each of your clients up individually one by one in case there isn't a kind of a bulk sign up. So the same way that you did with MTD for VAT. So some potential client implications. The first one is going to be change in record keeping. Obviously, it's not going to be a shoebox accounting of kind of dump all of those receipts onto your desk just before the end of January. They are going to have to change record keeping to ensure that they're keeping the records against that sort of quarterly return. So I would actually recommend that the clients keep the records weekly, if not monthly. Rising accountancy fees, which is, I suppose, good news for you guys. The accountant can expect rising accountancy fees based on the fact that changes have been made. And then adoption of online bookkeeping. So for those guys, or you may even want to roll out online bookkeeping for all of your clients, not just spreadsheets. But there is the option available for online bookkeeping. I know many clients that we've spoken with have rolled out Xero, QuickBooks, Free Agent to their clients, and their clients have actually really enjoyed having these kind of apps on their phones that have receipt scanners built in, rather than having to collect all of these receipts and then remember to include those all in the annual return, which will be abolished. Now, some benefits to you, so kind of on a lighter note, you can review accountancy fees, which is good. Decide whether you're going to charge for additional services, accountancy advice, or increase your fees on time or fixed fee. You've got quarterly input rates rather than a year's worth of receipts, which is going to be a lot more beneficial having to have those quarterly returns rather than having a massive build-up of a year's worth of receipts. You can deal with those once a quarter. Increased visibility is a really important one as well, and that will come in with any errors that are being made by the client specifically. So if the client has some input errors, you'll have the visibility there quarterly, so you can notice those and react to those a lot quicker and a lot easier. The spreading of workload is a really obvious one. Rather than having a kind of a silly season where January's chaos, it's spread throughout the year, which is going to hopefully reduce the workload and spread it across the year, which will be a lot nicer than having it all in one go. And then real-time tax information is what really MTD is all about. So you're able to find the tax information in close to real time as possible. So I think I'll pass you back to Tim here.
Thank you for that, Dan. So just to confirm it, in terms of Dan, I think you're referring there to rather than just January being madness, it won't be 4 lots of madness, it would be lesser madness. Is that fair to say?
Yes,
so January
exactly
would be
that, yeah.
one of the challenges that we have in terms of January is trying to speak with our users, which we tend not to from a sales perspective, but obviously our support team will speak with them on sort of a kind of a more frequent basis throughout the January period, and then everybody disappears in February, so we've got nobody to talk to thereafter. So that may not be the case moving forward with MTD. Okay, so we have some contact details here for you and a YouTube reference as well, which all of our video collateral is stored on. So if anybody would like information on product or topic, you're more than welcome to call in. We are, as you can see there, offering one-to-one demos, which are available through booking one via the telephone number. There's a free trial of our product available, and as a reference, the collateral in terms of videos are stored on our YouTube channel, which is seen on the bottom of the slide. In addition, well, there we go. That's a rogues gallery if ever I've seen one. So if anybody would like to contact BTCSoftware directly, there's a kind of a nod to who we are and who you'll speak with on the initial basis. I think Dan looks like he's playing golf. I've definitely been superimposed there because I've never been to New York. And I think Tom is in Iceland, is he not, Dan?
Yep.
There we go.
Yeah, so, he's in Reykjavik. Sunny looking Reykjavik.
There we go. There we go. So there you have it. So we would be delighted to engage with any of you should you have any questions in relation to the topic, or in addition, if you're interested in any of our offerings, you're welcome to contact the sales team directly. Okay, so that moves us nicely on to any questions. So Dan, I'm going to pass back to you.
Thank you, Tim and Dan. That was really insightful, especially some useful pieces at the end there. So we've had a few questions flooding in. I'll let you address some of those.
Thank you. So Dan, would you like to read some of the questions you've seen?
Yeah, okay. So the first question that we've got is, will my clients have to change their year end? So there actually isn't, you won't actually have to change the year end dates. You can get additional time for MTD, for income tax specifically, by moving your client's year end to the 31st of March, if they're currently on the 6th of April. This effectively provides an extra year before they're mandated to join, and that can give you a kind of a slower introduction to MTD. So that's a kind of a bit of a cheat there for you. Can clients who bring their records to me in paper format me to enter into Excel still do this? Can clients who bring their records for me in paper format for me to enter in Excel still need to do this? So the clients really, I suppose, could benefit from adjusting their year end so that you can work on getting them ready for spreadsheets, that's probably what I would recommend them to do, because ideally in the long run you're going to want them to move them on to at least spreadsheets, as your clients will have to have digital records behind the quarterly updates. So for them, providing paper to you won't be compliant. So yeah, you'll need to keep those in spreadsheets or other software. So I'd probably recommend moving the year-end date if you can for that particular client. I set up an agent services account for VAT. Can I still use it for income tax? Yep, that's a good question. So you will actually be able to use the same agent services account. But if you've got any new clients who aren't using your services for MTD for VAT, then obviously you'll need to authorize those for income tax. Will partnerships need to submit a quarterly self-assessment tax return, or will it only be for individuals? It will apply to partnerships, which will need to submit their quarterly assessments along with their individual assessments. So partnerships are unable to join the pilot, but they will be mandated to use MTD for income tax and self-assessment, as with other qualifying businesses for accounting periods from 2023 and onwards. I will set up a agent services account for VAT. Can I use it for income tax? Yep, I've answered that one. Will tax be payable quarterly, or is it still once a year? Yep, I think that is quarterly. The £10,000 threshold, is this a turnover or profit? I believe it is turnover. Any ideas on what the quarterly deadlines will be? Yep, I think we do have a list of those that we can maybe send across to you. So we can send you across the quarterly deadlines starting from the 4th of April, 2023. Any there that you want to answer, Tim?
I think what might be an idea is this. There's a number of questions. We're not going to cover all of them. What might be an idea would be to address the questions, and if everybody's happy for us to sort of email answers to the questions that have been posed, maybe a good idea, with the backing of our team behind us as well. So I feel that probably would represent a good idea. Would that be fair to say, Ros, in terms of if we would?
That's absolutely fine. I think there are some really technical questions that have come through that we'll take away and see if we can develop some content around. But also, as you say, we'll take all the questions away, see what we can answer directly or through content. So I just want to apologize to those we didn't have time to address, but we will follow up. I just want to thank again Tim and Dan. That concludes today's webinar. Thanks for your insight and advice. And I'd also like to thank our listeners for their time and questions. I hope you found the session useful. There will be a short feedback survey that pops up on your screen after the webinar finishes. So please complete this, because it's so important to us to be able to shape our future events based on your opinions. This webinar has been recorded, and we will send you a link on the on-demand recording later today. Thank you so much, and goodbye.